Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Waring, host of the PoemWorks reading series, which has been going on for more than 10 years. And it's my delight to have two featured readers tonight, followed by an open mic. And I like to begin these sessions with a few quotes. And so here we go. Irish poet Brendan Kennelly says, "Poetry is, above all, a singing art of natural and magical connection, because though it is born out of one person's solitude, it has the ability to reach out and touch in a humane and warmly illuminating way the solitude, even the loneliness of others. That is why, to me, poetry is one of the most vital treasures that humanity possesses. It is a bridge between separated souls." Writer Dorothy Allison says, "People want biography. People want memoir. They want you to tell them that the story you're telling them is true. The thing I'm telling you is true, but it did not always happen to me." And then there's this wonderful book called Otherwordly by Yi Lum Mak. And it contains all these strange and lovely words. Like, for instance, in the language of the Bantu, there's a verb phrase, mabuki mavuki, which means to shed one's clothing spontaneously and dance naked in celebration. Think about doing mabuki mavuki relatively soon in this hot weather. And of course, the Japanese are really good at this. Emerson once said that every word was once a poem, and the Japanese seem to have that kind of cornered in these one-word words that mean a whole bunch of stuff. So the Japanese noun Sudoku means buying books and not reading them, letting them pile up unread on shelves or floors or nightstands.
What would be wrong with that?
It's a whole thing, and they can just do it in one word. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then in our own English language, there's a noun, bibliothecary, one who collects, maintains, or cares for books. Bibliothecary. And lastly, in Icelandic, there's a verb phrase, papapola, jumping into puddles. Papapola.
Perfect word.
Maybe we do that soon and often. Well, our first reader tonight is Carla Schwartz, who is a filmmaker and photographer. Her poems have appeared in The Practicing Poet, and her collections Signs of Marriage, Finishing Line, Mother, One More Thing, Turning Point, and Intimacy with the Wind, also from Finishing Line. Recent and future curations include Banyan Review, Cutthroat, Great Weather for Media, McQueen's Quinterly, Modern Haiku, New Verse News, Patterson Literary Review, Sheila Nagig, Triggerfish, Worcester Review, and Leon. Carla is a recipient of a Mass Cultural Council grant. Her poem, Pat Schroeder Was Our Mother, won the 2023 New England Poetry Club E.E. Cummings Prize. Please welcome Carla.
Hi, and thank you so much. Okay, yeah, you can hear me. Thank you so much, and what a wonderful evening, and I'm so happy to be here. And I did put a few links in the chat, and I will put them again at the end of the reading. So if you're interested still in collecting for this Xiaoly challenge, there's a few books there that are listed. The first poem I'm going to open with, I decided I wanted to read Poems of Hope tonight. I'm trying to be hopeful, and I wrote this poem actually in the early morning this morning, and it's a Haibin, and it's called Green Rays of Summer. It could have been poetry, the pull of Zoom, of people in squares. After all, it was Thursday evening, Zoom o'clock, but it was the end of day. It was an old friend visiting. It was after dinner, and the sun was going to set on a beautiful day. The rollers of the afternoon had calmed, but still enough wind to blow the boat around at sunset. The heat of the day settled thick in the air, the quiet talk, the pitter-patter of memories, the echoes of waves knocking against pontoons, the sun closing over the horizon through the trees, so beautiful it could only draw a swim. Breast stroking against the current events. And my next poem, and I will ask people to mute if they're not speaking. I would appreciate that. This next poem is in my book, Signs of Marriage, and that's listed in the chat. And this is called 2020, and I'd like to think there's hope in it. You would have sat down at the kitchen table with my father that January night. Might have been the one to cook dinner for him, and even though he was not feeling well, he might not have been so indifferent as to wear his pajamas to dinner. You would have been there when his knees folded under as he tried to stand up. Might even have caught him, or you'd have driven him to the doctor that day, or you'd have had more sense than him to stop the both of you from driving by then. You would have had a smartphone, would have taken it in hand, punched up an Uber, and when my father recovered, you'd sit calmly discussing whom to vote for, Bernie or Kamala. When the pandemic shut everything down, you would have both worn masks among strangers, maybe taken strolls around the block. But when you'd learned about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, you'd remember the Nazi soldiers with their guns bursting into your home, would have mourned for lives lost, mourned for being too old to stand and protest. The two of you would have kept company. You'd have handled the technology, ordered meals, played the piano, video chatted with your friends. But by then you were long dead, and when my father's knees buckled him to the floor as he lay there unable to rise, he might have looked up and heard you call to him when the ambulance came. And this next poem is also in my book, Signs of Marriage, and it's called Stones. You began with just one rock mid-puddle of the front yard. We named it Rock Hudson, but then came two more to bookend the mud, Rock Around the Clock and Elizabeth Taylor. I loved the line of them, the symmetry. I never questioned the origins. You'd just arrive there at our sunken front yard, one large rock in the wheelbarrow at a time, until this was no random arrangement. You said you had one rule of rock. The flat side always goes down, so that hump side up, a rock might settle into its new home. Next, you made a line of rocks to guide the Y of our two stone paths. A kind of smile, I said, a rock smile. And you smiled, and the next day and the next, two more rocks to make the eyes. A few weeks later, a nose appeared, a little bent, a little sad, but a nose. Then the effort changed. You graduated from pry bar and shovel to blocks, straps, and a come-along. Soon you'd urge 1,000-pound boulders to find their new sweet spot in our yard. most flat side down, until I told you I liked the flat side. So we pried, blocked, and tipped together until one flat face shone back at us. One morning, you brought me to the backyard and showed me the aisle you had created with the stones you'd moved. I said, well, if we ever get married, this will be our aisle. And you rolled your eyes, but later handed me something plain, palm size with a plainer face, a glittery stone of mica and quartz. And this next poem is actually in my book called Intimacy with the Wind. And it's called Photoshopping the Body. And I refer to some of the tools that are in Adobe Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
Surely my mother would have known what to do, would have understood masking, healing. She once used Illustrator to make a rainbow Medusa of my sister's hair. That was back in the 90s when nothing was obvious. She was just that kind of woman to dive into a computer program and wrangle with it until she got what she wanted. For this image of me in my bikini, she would have been a magic wand wizard, smoothing out the wrinkles and shadows, removing the thickness around the thighs. That same belly, those same thick thighs she bore with a click plus drag of a mouse, wouldn't she? To look in the mirror and see my mother's rounded body, the sunburst of skin from the navel, the rays, the folds, the darker vertical depression that leads netherward. What I was once embarrassed of for her saddens me. My mother never wore a bikini, but would have relished summers on this lake, to swim every morning after waking just a few steps from shore. My mother, if only she were here, would sit with me overlooking the lake, wearing shorts and oversized tee, an iPad in hand, never mind her belly, and swipe, tap, hold. This next poem, I think we're moving into the fruit section of this reading. And so I have a lot of fruit poems actually, but I think there's a lot of hope in fruit. And this poem is no exception. It's called To Make a Pie. First, just imagine the blueberries, 1,000 blue pearls that slide into your vessel as you play your fingers down the bush like harp strings. Oh, the slipping of berry to hand. Now imagine where those berries reside. On which island? Will you swim the miles there or kayak? And how the wind might thwart or aid your journey. Now step into your boat and go. I made that pie, that blueberry pie, with wind, the wind I fought to overcome to reach the abandoned island, with sweat that soaked my shirt that humid day, with joy of stepping off the boat, submerged to my pants. The wind I fought to glean. I made that pie with the willpower not to eat all the berries before climbing back into the boat to return home. I made that crust, its cookie crumble self, with oil of coconut, an egg, and ground almonds. I baked the crust while I prepared the filling. How difficult can this pie be? Too few berries, fill the rest of the crust with any fruit you can cull from your freezer. Peaches, rhubarb, add cinnamon, cornstarch, a drop or two of lemon for sour, then bake and taste the wind, the fruits of your labor.
Hmm.
And this next poem, which is also in my book, Signs of Marriage, which is my most recent book, is called Raspberries. As a man and a woman meet in the afternoon, safely distanced across the raspberry patch, they pick and taste, melt berry to tongue, lean in and stretch to reach the laden branch some distance into the stand, into the heart of the stand. As they pick, they move round and round the berries, a berry dance. You know how it is with raspberries. You must circle more than once to find what you've missed the first go round. They speak not of the heaviness of the years lost between them, begun around some other patch of fruit, not of their diaspora, not their chance reunion. No, hell no. Raspberries, only raspberries. I tell you, these two, they swallow the drupelets, ignore the scratches. Between fingers, they pinch the flavor. And I have another raspberry poem for you. This is from my book, Mother, One More Thing is my first book, and from Turning Point. And it's called A History of Raspberries. Frances lived in a little house between Route 9 and the Pike. She had been there 40 years, through 2 kids grown and gone, husband dead, cigarette habit dead, but her plantings thrived. She was thinning raspberries one year and offered me some. I made a place for these to compete with my wild blacks, which I could take or leave. When I lived in Vermont, I planted raspberries in front of the bathtub Mary. I don't know what the nuns next door thought about that, but those berries were good. It took 3 years before the first berries arrived, one October, just barely before the first frost. In November, I put 2 soft, plump ones in a silver cardboard ring box to bring to my mother, sick in hospital. Her eyes lit on them as if they were holiday ornaments or truffles or cherry stones on the half shell. Now Frances is dead, lung cancer. Mom, leukemia. I get a summer and fall crop of raspberries. I had berries into December this year. I still have the red-stained box. Each bite a sweet, tart burst. Frances, my mother, bathtub Mary. And I have another fruit poem here. It's called, from Mother, One More Thing. It's called In Defense of Peaches. My mother tied her socks to the peach tree in front of her house. I'm guessing she took sweaty ones off her feet one day, or specially donned old ones and hung them in an old shirt to scare away squirrels and rabbits, maybe after reading about it somewhere. Better than fox urine for sure. The socks still hang on the tree. Larva lollipops. None of us has thought to press nose to cloth and inhale. That was her last wish, to go outside. Let whatever of Mom still imbues remain there and hang year-round like her clay bells. The other day, under my peach tree, there were 4 hard ones shaken down and chewed as best a greenstone can be. Must have been a squirrel with a bad memory, taking a bite of one and a next, leaving the unfinished to ferment. That same day, I discovered my shoe was lucky, twice lost in 3 months, first on a mountain, next on a road. Maybe I should nestle those shoes into the crook of my peach tree to fend off the wildlife. Maybe my mother's climbing shoes will do. Maybe this year I'll be lucky in peaches. And this is a much newer poem. It is also a peach tree poem, and it's a variety that I grew this year, and I absolutely am in love with it. It's called, the peach is called The Flat Wonderful, and that's the name of the poem. Is Hope for the Flat Wonderful. I have so much hope in my peach tree in spring, its spray of pink. Look inside the blooms, the pistil lashes, the red shadows. Close your eyes, the faint perfume of peach. I have so much fear in a late frost, so much frustration at work undone, the throwing on of sheets, the despair of the snowing down of pink petals before they set their fruit. When the frost is gone, I have hope for the blossoms that remain and wait. Watch them drop and blow away in the wind. There's so much beauty in this tree, its curves, its bends, its dance as it bushes out with leaves, even in summer, a deep burgundy, a red as pungent in color as the blossom's scent. This tree, so relatively small yet sturdy enough to take a strong wind. And when small fruit dot the branches, hanging like Christmas baubles, how can I not but hope? This next poem is called Extra Bones. When the orthopedist insisted on a surgery of his own invention, when he threatened crippledom by age 25, unless I had both feet in casts for all of third grade, my mother sought a second opinion from a kind-hearted doctor who skimmed his fingers over the os navicularis just above my instep and prescribed arch supports and exercises, my ups and downs, my ins and outs, to stem the pain I felt every hike my mother coaxed me on. The needles of ache at which at 8 I couldn't staunch, until as time went on, I grew and outgrew the hurt above my arches. But by then, I thought I was too old to hike with my mother, who loved the steps, the stones, the views, until she grew too old, then died. Today on my mountain hike, in my years much beyond those 25, I notice the distant color-strewn hills, crystal towers of frost built up on the moss, the fungal orange moons under a root. On a steep descent with halting steps, I take care not to slip, but when an icy patch takes me down, I sit with the stone, wearing my mother's hiking pants, and laugh my mother's laugh at how it smarts. And do I have time for one more? Or
Absolutely, yes.
okay. I think, yes, I will end with this one. It's another Heiben. It's another one that I find to be hopeful. It talks about the glass ceiling that we know potentially our next president is going to have to burst through and will burst through. And it also talks about some personal experiences with that glass ceiling. And it's called Advice from Stephen Hawking to a Future President. Look up at the stars, not down at your feet. 4, that's the number 4. 4, my Erdős number, same as Hawking's, an attribute I garnered in 1984, even before my doctorate, before writing a string of grants, most rejected, before the invitation to a review panel at the National Science Foundation. Sit here, token woman, and keep your mouth zipped, where the other panelists, 4 of them, all men, wanted to fund only the scientific equivalent of the rich and famous, or their friends, no concern for the underrepresented or fry smaller than them. This was before social media, before crowdfunding, when the NSF and the military were it for the realm of publish or perish. So zipped quiet on this panel, I wanted to slip back onto the couch at my DC hotel, but didn't. Only after so many years of relegation to staring at my lowly feet did I understand this hadn't been my place. Or maybe it wasn't my time, although now I realized I had achieved something not many others had. My relatively low Erdős number, something named for collaboration with Paul Erdős, who would have turned my current self dead for having stopped my practice. Erdős, who before couch surfing was a thing, couch surfed most of his life in exchange for a co-write with a host. That Erdős, who'd sit down to a meal with his laundry while his laundry was spinning, who'd conjecture in banter until proof was forthcoming. And the the haiku for this, sorry, the haiku is mathematical breakthrough, the glass ceiling. And that is it. And I thank you so much for attending. And I can't wait to hear Eileen read.
Wow, Carla, that was great. And I'm glad that you're innovating with the high bun. It's a very interesting form. Love that. And I loved all the peaches and mother imagery. That there's something so succulent about that. And you know, here we are. We just had the full strawberry moon. I love all your fruit poems. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Richard. I really appreciate that. And everybody here.
Next, we have Eileen Cleary. She is the author of Wild Pack of the Living and 2 a.m. with Keats, both from Nick's Mate, and Child Ward of the Commonwealth from Main Street Rag Press, which received an honorable mention for the Sheila Margaret Motten Book Prize. She co-edited the anthology Voices Amidst the Virus. The featured text at the 2021 MSU Filmetry Festival. Eileen founded and edited the Literary Poetry Review and Literary Poetry Review books, and curates the Lily Poetry Salon. A multi-pushcart nominee, her work is published widely in journals and anthologies. Please help me welcome Eileen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard, for continuing this wonderful series through the PoemWorks community. And I wanted to just tonight not only thank everyone who's tuning in and tell you I'm looking forward to your poems. Thank you, Carla Schwartz, for those wonderful poems, which remind me that humor and a line of poetry also, both of those things are the shortest distance between two people. I really enjoyed them. And as always, I think everybody has in mind Barbara Helfgott Hyatt on nights like this, who taught at schools and colleges in Boston and founded the Writers' Room in Boston. Her signature workshop, PoemWorks, began this community, and it's a vibrant community she fostered, and it continues to thrive today through talented poets such as many who are in this audience, and certainly Richard Waring. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to read from Wild Pack of the Living, but then also two outlier poems that are not in the book. And the first book is called Inhuman, for Jeff Oakes. And he is a writer who I published and adored, and he passed from cancer in December. And so this is just about our writing journeys together and a little bit about him. Inhuman, for Jeff Oakes. You weren't grown when your mother's swollen face sprouted more asters than the field where you both hid until it slept it off and left for work. Did you, as 12-year-old, divine that your earth form was designed to guide the contused along the Allegheny? In novel tongue, you named things, not like a Martian calls a book a Caxton, bird with many wings. Instead, your nouns rang thin moonlight after a grown bully smashed your mom's jam jars. Pittsburgh loved you, how you taught kids to empty garbage into elegies while your dog caught lightning branches by the railroad tracks. Guess everybody's on their way to someplace else. I wish you never had to unzip and leave your human suit. Where'd you wind up? Blind drives after sunset. No one can find you. Were you sent to embrace the whole mess of us? I still see us writing at a breakfast nook, a water wheel just outside the window. Does that pond's indigo still mill wheat to flour? Unspoken over poached eggs, could our fingers ever spin granite into verse anyone would print? Why cling to figurines? Blue toad, green parakeet. Jeff, you died and left behind your shoestrings, button roses, this ode and bittersweet. I heard your boy Andy has fetched his last stick, past wind, past snow. Your words tumify my throat. Suddenly, that great sadness of coats. And I guess I actually will begin. I'll just read from Wild Pack now. Wild Pack of the Living is a book for Stephen Stainer. And when I was a teenager, I heard on the news that he had been abducted from his family and gone missing for 7 years. And so he was 7 when he was taken and 14 when he returned home, escaping his captor, and in the process saving another boy. And so his story inspired me greatly. To me, Stephen was a hero because I had been seized from my family by the state in what felt like a legally sanctioned abduction. And my brother Carl also went missing, stolen by his foster family, and was lost to us for 40 years. Can somebody please mute? My experience and Stephen's are not identical, but they are emotional cousins. And so this book is for Stevie. And so here we go. If Stevie were never taken, I'd stop seeing the parkway where red ball gas persists long after it closed for business. The service clerk sponging the windshield, dusty as a country road, could finally retire. If I recognized Stevie sluggish in the back seat, I'd see where the sedan's spectacled driver, nearly hairless, hyperglycemic, haphazardly eluding capture, must be fleeing. And I'd pursue him, learning by heart his license plate and face, the hard years of his years, his wintering. I'd rid his Buick's trunk of its church flyers with fake monks, shred the ruse he printed to appeal to the gullible and plain old religious, every one with a young son. I'd gag his give to the poor, Mrs. Jones and Mr. Bean. He's out of Grimm's with sleeping pills spilled in the console coursing through Yosemite. If he leaves no tracks on the packed ground of Tioga Pass, who can follow where he crossed into that camp? I can't think because of the cabin I'd be forced to tour. I might have to touch, not a monster per se, more like eyes torching dry leaves in fire season. And the peach canner to his missing son. So Stephen's father worked in a peach can factory and also had a farm for a short time. And this poem is after Paul Nemser, the peach canner to his missing son. Long past this orchard, the innocent hour tills. My arms open as if expecting to surround you. Time is a hummingbird we can't outdistance, alit on a fragile limb. A curve of blossoms overhead and blossoms heavenward petal my narrow prayer. Orchards in which I concede you're missing. Globes glimmer ablaze as is their way. Sapwoods chant, restore the sun. Rose pivoted green by the tilt of the planet. Rose blushed pink by a meadow birthing star. The pearl at the center lingers, snow melt slaking its thirst. I am calling you back to the orchard I must one day abandon. This grove forfeits a measure of heat each time your little shadow sends no word.
Mm.
So at one point in Stephen's journey, or more than one, but one well-documented point, he did tell a teacher in 7th grade what happened, but you'll see from this poem how that went. Junior Scholastic for Stephen Stainer. The awkward 7th grade, all arms and legs, voices soaring and falling, finally cracking, guitar strings stretched too tight. Stephen frets over under fluorescence, where he reads with the others an article on lost children. This isn't that wildlife magazine where he learned to track backyard animals whose prints vanish when mud meets grass cover. A ranger looks for clues. A trunk where a buck rubbed its antlers, baby squirrels sussering oak leaves, a hollow where a red fox sleeps. Junior Scholastic says to solve a mystery, be curious. Today brings Stephen as close as he's ever been to telling. How strange the words feel. A fat pigeon's feathers coughed from his throat. He chokes. I miss my family, though no one hears. The teacher doesn't mean to brush him aside. It's just that the recess bell rings and the class clamors to play outside.
Mm.
Abducted boy returns home after 7 years. New York Times, March 4th, 1980. He couldn't have known how much his parents would shrink inside their pea green frame house, or that his once small siblings would outsize their twin mattresses, or that his first collie would be fenced only in before's invisible lawn. Now he can only speak of cow and pigs, the farm they still owned before he went missing. During's verboten. Sometimes, if he recalls During, his brain projects that scene on the screen of his sweatshirt pulled over his eyes so that his parents can't see that he did smile in the lost centuries. His memory shows him smoking with his friends in the woods or rafting on a lake between two cliffs. If he claps his hands, he can measure the distance between boy then and boy now. Never enough hands to cover his mouth if he dares to share anything blue. Blue geraniums outside a busted trailer, blue lupines, blue flax, or blue panic attacks. Sometimes the night is blue-black, and his mind maps the migration of the one wail no one else can hear. Meanwhile, cicadas broadcast their secrets. They timble their miniature drums, spreading their news instead of hiding in their rooms or staying out late after school.
Mm.
Portrait of a missing child as cloud. Caged by trees, he could be a boy, another's hands stroking or strangling. Or are these day moon ponderings? Even if this is the child, he cannot answer. So do not ask, is that you? You cannot reach him, though he seems to stir in you. And who is mute if you hear him whisper and do not answer? Because the sky grieves to hold him, this parcel of air is heavy, sultry and purple, pressed on the rangy shoulders of wild saplings. Years in the cloud has not disclosed itself. Are you nobody too?
Mm.
And this is a poem for my brother, Johnny, at 61 after Dorian Lux. A quick sign of the cross for the boy in the cowboy hat. dimpled and smiling as if this blessing means a pulsing rope never squeezed his neck for too many newborn minutes, as if he might not jump off the roof once he's no longer content to belt out Delta Dawn or What's Going On with a transistor radio in his lap long after the 9-volt dies. As if the staff at yet another group home would never lecture that Johnny is a man, and because he is a man, we no longer can gift him plastic Bonnie Rubbles munching cocoa pebbles from a clay bowl, even though we know Bonnie as a noble-hearted man who loves his feral boy, even though that boy misuses his strength and others have left him to be raised by my wild mastodons. Keeping up with the joyful tone of my reading, I'm going to read a poem called Loneliness after Elizabeth Bishop. Don't think of unbroken mustangs in the sagebrush, rounded up like gangsters, then fenced in, their captive gallopings. Don't think of helicopters startling them into holding pens, how one mare fractured in the frenzy, how the other's ears stung as if they'd heard a shot. Don't think about the orphan foals whose hoofs don't remember grassy loam or their mother's grooming, or ghost lullabies, nickered and distant trees, or how the ancient and mum maples listened to, then fed their saplings liquid sugar, helpless in any act of resisting the herd's capture. How rain erased the footprints where their once strong legs thundered through the plains. How petrichor reminds them of stones and wild roses, and how once they breathed free. And I'm going to close the reading with a poem called Leaves and Blooms. And I thank you all for being here and for listening. Leaves and Blooms. Soon, April, and those of us who'd frozen our fingers close-pinning children's outfits into brightly colored popsicles, or who'd shoveled snow just before the town's plow pushed the icy streets onto our driveways, or who'd spilt the golden retriever's ashes, we'd agreed none of us would scatter until spring when all of us could gather, blink away lopsided snowmen blinded by hungry does. We notice the neighbors drag away electric deer who've glared through our windows for so long that our rescue puppy no longer interrogates them. We cannot help but recall our parents' tree, its poisoned tinsel, or the year Shiva swallowed it while lodged with litter. Or was that the year she'd widened but didn't whelp? The year she'd collected and mothered the ornaments? The year she would not let any of us near the torn rabbit? Anyway, their deer had stood since before the couple left to have their daughter, and long after the morning they returned without her. But let's not fret about Christmas decorations from our past, or those strewn on our neighbor's lawn. Mud season arrives despite the stillborn, the earth rolling over as predicted. If we live long enough, we pause when the ground softens, the woodpile dampens, or the sparrow song is close enough to touch. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. Just wow, you know, the empathy in your work, so many stunning lines that people have mentioned in the chat that you should go look at while we're doing our open mic. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Eileen.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And now let's hear from other people in the room. We have a nice lineup here, and we're going to start with Kathy Whitham.
Wow. Need to make a little space between the reading and this. Really blown away by that the last last reading, Eileen, and then thank you, Carla. So much humanity in all of it. So I went, I was between two, but I landed on the one that touches on the concept of the hope related to finding your voice. When a drop of water gently falls from my eye, it's called a tear. If it drips off my face, it's called a moon, trying to find a place to belong. If it falls on your cheek, it's called see me. If it silently slices across my throat, it's called voiceless. 2. She walked the low-tide beach, curving all the way to Provincetown, her boot heels crunching soggy sand. Her prayer, an unexpected jaguar, pierced the gauzy cloth of morning mist. Seagulls wandered on the exposed sandbar. As she neared, they moseyed deeper, leaving dinosaur footprints behind.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Margery Silver.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I'm going to read a poem called Drawing Birds at Twilight, which was published in a journal called the Journal of Undiscovered Poets. And I always wondered if once you got into it, you could never submit anything to it again. You'd been discovered. But anyway, Drawing Birds at Twilight. Drawing birds with charcoal pencil, light strokes for clouded sky at dusk. Rub with index finger to flattened gray, as far as the horizon. Press hard for twin twisted lines, trees that silhouette black against the sky. Next, draw the chickadee. Erase gray, show the breast's white plumpness. Press hard for black cap and throat. Then add the feeder's peg, targeted for a downward dive to dine. The titmouse, not so bold, scurs in and out the top branches. Shade him grayer than the sky. Sketch proud crest tufts and bear down for round black eyes, scouting for sunflower seeds below. When the downy woodpecker swoops in, take care to capture the symmetry of two white dotted black lines that follow the sides of his wide white center strip. He taps a thick branch as he prepares to snatch his share of seeds. Do not darken twilight to opaque night that will hide the birds till dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Margery. Up next, we have Scott Rosenthal.
Okay, I'm a survivor of the psychiatric system. I was misdiagnosed not before the drugs did damage. Electroshock sovereignty, or Kappa. the Coalition Against Psychiatric Assault. It's a group out of Canada, and they asked me to author this, to compose this. Refuse of stars, hemmed by streets, seeking skies untainted. Mind dims, pain and circles. Save your degrees, stay on your pedestals. Drink your own lightning. We are more than the ledgers of our naming, louder than the silence of our living.
Wow.
How much time do we get, or just one poem? Or?
One poem, but amazing. Drink your own lightning. Wow. That got to me.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Xiaoly.
Hello, and I'm going to read a poem called Dichotomy. The snake's scales gleam yellow and black. He's engulfing the bulgy-eyed frog, whose throat and chest heave roar. The frog contracts with each gulp, gasping for air. My heart shamed. I remember night-caught frogs, cooked delicious and spicy by my kindergarten teachers. I favor the frog now. His croak is music. His song fills twilight's veil, a symphony of double bass in the nearby pond. I'm not keen on the snake, but I have saved his molted skin. Dragon's rope, a treasure in Chinese medicine, to my jewelry box. With their serpentine bodies, Nuwa, the mother goddess, and the Fuxi, the sage, entwined, they made our ancestors. The frog is less visible now from the stretch of the snake's mouth, who's slithering back to the hole in the granite wall. The wisest technique on the battlefield from the ancient 36 stratagems is to retreat. I can no longer watch. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Awesome. Up next, we have Steve Rudnick.
Hi, this is my first poem after disappearing for 4 decades from the Amherst poetry scene, which I was a part of in the late 1970s. It's called The Leaf. Plastered across my face was embarrassment. I had lost the leaf with its colorful skin of orange and yellow with speckles of red, with its past seasons etched into its veins. They had meant to press into wax paper to preserve the story of an old mandolin, which lied on the autumn ground of a New England suburban sidewalk and now served as a refuge for darkish green mosses that tainted its belly. Small brown ants that scurried across its narrow bridge, and gray squirrels taking a break from acorn collecting to play with its worn, stretched, steely strings. With wonderment, I thought over what happened to the musician who composed soulful melodies on her. The winter's wind told of an unmarked grave, but a salty spring breeze suggested that the musician left for the seas, unable to take his mandolin with him. Again, I spied upon the leaf. It had fallen to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And now please welcome David Banach.
Thank you very much for those poems. This is a new poem. It's called What is a Person? A person is a person, is a center of rights, individual and an end in themselves, and they are born and they die, people living before them and lasting after them, born into a language, a world, a culture, already existing, always memories of a home that never was, and the way you can never imagine yourself into that nothing sandwich, into that you were not before birth, the unthinking empty of a world going on without you. Where is my mother? My child, where will you find me? And how can I be anything without the void, wound left in me? I look at you, your face, and infinity opens. My God, it's full of stars, reflected on the shine, the surface keeping me out. But I owe it everything, you, everything. Take my hand, take the bread from my mouth. My home is yours, substituted, myself drawn into you. A person is never just a person is. And I will sing of us, the we found under the face reflected in the water. Sing the depths unplumbed of naked need. Sing with me our joint undoing. Dance the vulnerable body, hungry, naked, entered and left. We are together. I love you, a person. You are a person. And loving you, I almost love myself. The sun sings, yellow leaf, blade, green shouts aloud in joy. We will die, but today we dance. Hold my hand, finally knowing in unknowing what we are together. Dance with me.
Awesome. Thank you. And now, please welcome MP Carver.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks. That was a wonderful reading, Eileen and Carla. Fantastic. Thanks for having me on the open mic. This is a persona poem. Moby Dick on that Captain Ahab. I'm not shy. I'll tell anyone who asks that I can't stand the man. Who was it following who everywhere? I hate even the way he chews in the clicking of his peg. By the way, I had nothing to do with that leg. He got drunk one night, entangled in the rigging when he fell. He'd been up there looking for me, but I floated so low and still, a trick of the light. I didn't mind seeing him cry, hanging there. I liked imagining the bite of the rope that held him, its roughness against his hot skin. I waited long hours in the freezing water of those whaling grounds. No one came to save him. I could have spouted off or rocked the ship a bit, woken up the cook or the mate in time to save the limb. But the sea was too gentle to disturb. Thanks.
Thank you. Up next, please welcome Clay Ventre.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, this is called Extended Angular Advice for the Pathologically Unsure. If down beyond repair, defunct, if a stuck boat in a sea of molasses, all gestures down and out, if a hammer is rusty, if a laugh box is broken, as downtrodden as a misplaced tube sock puppet, brass knuckles gone all flowery, motivation long away and over the hills. If it's malfunctioning as a loose cucumber, if the rain has hit the dustbin and sentiments sit off the shoulders, oversized flannel and gray, If found to be all silly putty in the gnarled hands of the unassailable gods, then pitch the baby down the well. Stop all payments to the down and out. Salt the land. Sit grumpy. Spew bile. Take all day to run to the rescue. Lay banana peels in the path of the already square and tipsy. On a table, tap away a friend's concentration. Brick up the butterfly. Let nothing rest. Or you could always nail a fake Mondrian to the side of your house to ward off any marauding impressionists, their fancy pants jujitsu dapple in light and shadow. Or maybe just keep a horse in your head, one that is relentlessly standing and sad in the rain. Be still like that. There'll always be time later to rescue a turtle to a fanfare of bugles, to see you did good, and sleep like an idol in the hands of a believer. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now, here is Gemme.
Thanks, Rich. Wonderful reading tonight, everyone. This is called Thumbing. Pummeled wet, rolled out pulp, pith to paper. There on the gray conveyor, frayed layers. I quit the long hours at Weyerhaeuser. Factory skipped down the Route 2A, naysaying, now you see me, now you don't. I'm danger, unbridled, little outlaw, wayfarer, longing double solid lines, school skipper past glades of silver swale, knock me over guardrails, no caution signs, no speed limit, rain-soaked, fun-stoked, all points bulletin. No matter if the sheet is legal wide ruled, make scrap, make scratch, bond cellulose. Nothing scares me. I'm bee-stung honeycomb. I don't care. I meander. I'm freedom. Thank you.
Awesome, Pam. Thank you. Up next, please welcome Connemara Wadsworth.
Mute myself. This is not a recent poem. The day she planned to die. There were times of being lucid. There were times when her disease and the drugs left her mind alone. She'd know exactly what she wanted. One morning she announced, "Today is the day." I asked, "For what?" "To die," she said, like that. She rested, slept, perhaps imagining death or practicing, as if she could beckon it, convince it she was ready. I watched her chest rise and fall, her eyes flutter. Once I asked her who she'd like to see, if she had messages for others. She could dictate a letter. By afternoon, she was pissed that she hadn't died. Her will thwarted. She asked for morphine. I said maybe her body wasn't ready as she was. She'd have to wait. Call the doctor, she said. I said, it's Sunday. We won't get him. She said, we will have to wait. Well, let's eat and drink. She didn't. She meant us. I wondered what filled her thoughts. If fear had crept in masked as anger, I wonder if she knew how much was in all the vials in the refrigerator.
Wow. Thank you, Connemara.
Thank you.
Up next, please welcome Martha McCollough.
Hi, this is a wonderful reading. It's great to hear so much good poetry. I have a short poem about the eclipse called Solar. Overhead, the sun, suddenly dangerous, whispers
Look at me. I am interestingly misshapen. An omen no one attends. I've been explained. But if the earth were to rock just now, wouldn't you shudder? Do you see the light grown dusky? I am sending the birds to sleep. A little nap. Look, look, a dragon is eating me. Why do you only look down at sickle-shaped shadows shivering up and down the walk? Study the ground through colanders when you should bang on them and shout to frighten off sun-swallowing frogs. Thanks.
Wow. And now here is Kerry Loughman.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this great Friday night. I'm going to read a new poem. It's a form that I had never heard of before called a tritina, and it's called Suburbia. The neighborhood is lush, leaves pearled with raindrops. Summer condensing on the skin of a chilled green glass. Sunshine lashes luminous, stripes barcodes on the street to brand unwary children running barefoot down the street. White camellia drapes translucent under weight of raindrops. Languid my eyelids lulled by faux pastoral looking glass. Lubricious pride glides across green grass, sharded with glass. A blue jay shrieks, attacks the sparrow fledgling in the street. Complacency tilts and spills, thirsting for one more raindrop. Through a lenticular glass, raindrops dance in line, chorus down Easy Street. Thank you.
Nice. That was our penultimate poet, and I'm going to close things out. I recently got to hear my son perform with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in Germany. And while I was there, a poem occurred. This is called Lines Composed While Listening to Keith Jarrett's Cologne Concert album, 50 years after its release, during a stay in Cologne, January 24th, 2024. What he did, tired, hungry, on a partially tuned baby grand, not the grand piano promised by the 18-year-old promoter in her first gig, in the minutes before midnight, after almost not going through with it, the creative urge coming just as it was needed, burning into the mundane mortal armament to where angels wait in their impatient glory to praise what is precisely at risk and precarious with downfall, all along asking not to be terrified with coming up short, because this love of what remains good, remains sound, is playable in the heat yet to be released by no more than these hands, rolling like a fingery version of the sea, tectonic, resplendently resounding down through the decades, a horn of plenty jamming my ears, where the slumber of reason brings forth the rise. And thank you all for this wonderful evening. Here we are all together. And does anyone have any other reflections, remarks to make?
Just thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
I'd like to say that to Carla and Eileen, that I've heard you read some of these poems before, but every time you read, I discover new things, or you present yourself in other ways. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you.
Kerry. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. I'll say something then, Eileen, if you want to say something else too. I just wanted to say that when I chose the poems, I realized I have like my favorite poems to read, and I end up reading a lot of these often. But I wanted to. I also like. I really appreciate what you said, Kerry, because I really like to read them in a different light, and I feel that you can't, hearing a poem just once isn't necessarily enough, I think.
Right.
So
Exactly. I agree.
thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I think sometimes there's an energy, whether it's in a room, a physical room where we're all together, or where poets are together online, where the energy of the room affects the reading and affects kind of the overall intake of the poems. And so I think in that community where we all are literally communing with one another and our words are in the air, it does affect the reading. And so every time someone comes to another person's reading their part of the poems there too.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Eileen. And yeah, it's to hear everybody's poems was just wonderful tonight. I really enjoyed it.
I once heard Audre Lorde at Sanders Theater, and after reading her first poem, she turned to the audience that was clapping and she said, no, just use it, take it. I feel that evenings are so nutritive to all of us. It's a spreading of fertilizer for our future poems and ourselves.
And also, Richard, your clear love of poetry and language and literature is a beautiful thing to be in the presence of, and we appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Really lovely. And nice to see so many people here. And we look forward to seeing the recording whenever that comes out.
Yes, in just a few days.
All right.
I'll let you know.
Do you leave them all on, or do you take some out?
They're all there, going back quite a ways on the website. It's all a link that I have in the flyers that I send out.
Wonderful.
You can find it there.
Perfect.